Shalom, greetings, friends. Welcome to this episode here of the Watchdog. Going to be a little bit of a special episode in a sense. We are talking only about one topic today, and we're actually going to be listening to the governor of Idaho's press conference here today, live. We've been told it is going to be streamed up on Facebook. And so hopefully we will be able to actually get that streamed live to you guys with some personal commentary on both the virus as it affects Idaho, as it affects the country, as it affects the world, and also on the governor's press conference itself. Now, for those of you who are watching this live, I do recognize that it's probably going to be some poor audio quality for you, so I do apologize for that. This is going to be re-uploaded in its pre-recorded form with much higher video and much higher audio quality. So just know that. And also, if you watch this press conference live, I am following along with you. So if you'd like to get the audio quality live there from the governor himself, whilst getting my commentary here, you certainly can do so. Before we actually, let me just check in to make sure he hasn't started yet. Before we actually get into this, there are a few notes I want to make about how this virus has impacted us here in Idaho so far. There has been quite a bit of panic. If I am not mistaken, the number here does say 9, so it doesn't look like I am mistaken. A total of 9 people have been confirmed to have the coronavirus here in Idaho. There are no deaths at this current point in time. It is my understanding that the tests did come out relatively late, but I guess that is something that has turned out to not be so much of a problem, at least at this time. Now, the governor has gone out of his way to actually make sure schools were not going to be closed down, at least from the top down, and businesses and churches and so on and so forth, right? And that they were going to actually have the decisions to close down or to not close down themselves. Most of the schools did. The entire West Ada County School District and Boise County School District have now gone online. Most of the universities at this point have also gone online. Sorry, if you're looking here on the screen, I am just simply looking to see and make sure that he is not streaming this press conference yet. So if you're wondering what's going on there, that's what's going on there. I very much respect Governor Little, actually, for this decision not to shut everything down, because I actually think that currently, as it stands today, the biggest problem we have with coronavirus is panic around coronavirus. Let me be perfectly clear here. The Chinese government has had something like 0.005, I hope you're catching this, 0.005% of their population that they have reported infected, and the infection rates are going dramatically down. Now, that is without the stellar medical care of the United States. That is without the stellar payment and employee, what do you call that, conditions that we have in the United States for working and living and so on and so forth, the stellar hygiene we have in the United States, the stellar communication we have in the United States, the lack of political corruption, especially when compared to China, that we have in the United States, and yet they only managed, despite being absolute failures in all those regards, they only managed a 0.005% rate of infection, okay? At 0.005% rate of infection, that would make 1.7 million, actually, it's even less. It's 1,625,000 Americans who actually get sick. Just under 1.7 million, right? On top of that, the death rate is roughly 2%. It's been as high as 8%, but if you take the 2% minimum and the 8% maximum, and you take about 1.7 million people getting sick, which is the rate that we seem to be indicating from China and other groups like that, right? What you end up finding is between 32,000 and 130,000 dead. So, in other words, the coronavirus is either going to be exactly like the flu or ever so slightly worse than the flu. But either way, all evidence suggests that the coronavirus is not something to be panicking about. But what is something to be panicking about is the panic about coronavirus. You see, you can't go to the store and buy toilet paper and peanut butter and bread and all those things because people are freaking out, not because of a virus. You're currently in jeopardy of losing your job or of losing hours on your job or of not being able to pay your rent as a result of losing hours on your job. Not because of the coronavirus, but because people are freaking out about the coronavirus. You're not able to go to church right now. You're not able to meet with your book club right now, all that kind of stuff. Not because of the coronavirus, but because people are freaking out about the coronavirus. And you need to understand this, because this freak out is the biggest problem we have in the United States. And Governor Little currently is the only governor in the state that I'm aware of, or not in the state, in the country rather, that I'm aware of, who has declined to freak out. And he's being heavily criticized for it. And I want to say to any of my listeners here who are in Idaho, please do encourage the governor, because you will not like it if we go the route of Washington, of San Francisco, of New York City, right? What are you going to do, factory worker, when you're 30 days out of work? What are you going to do, restaurant worker, when you're 30 days out of work? Call it 2 weeks. What are you going to do, right? And I'm sorry, but a couple thousand, tens of thousands of people dying, just like the flu, or just like cancer, or just like plenty of other diseases we have around, is not worth you losing your livelihood, is not worth you losing your ability to have a sense of community, is not worth you losing your house, your apartment, whatever it happens to be, and etc. So I want to go ahead and take the time to thank Governor Little for that. I'm still not finding anything on this press conference at the moment, so I guess we'll see what is going on there. One thing I do want to point out while we're waiting also is this freakout has caused a lot of particular problems for Idaho. Of course, just like everybody else, we're running out of toilet paper just like anybody else. We're having people, having to restock the shelves constantly and all the time, and stores are shutting down. And of course, the reason for this is due to the coronavirus and the panic around the coronavirus. But some of the other things we've been seeing, there's been churches, for example, there's been a church here in Eagle that has had people actually attacking, not in any sort of physical way, but attacking the pastor for having the audacity to stay open, saying he must be a terrible person and not very Christian and so on and so forth. There was a man in Horseshoe Bend who outright murdered a little boy because he was screaming, "This is the end of the world," and just decided he was going to start shooting, right? And so on and so forth. These problems, my friends, these panic-driven problems are very real. And the thing is, the coronavirus problem really is not. To the best of the information we possess, it is a slightly worse flu. It is not worth people being murdered. It is not worth people, canceling church services and attacking their pastor and losing their jobs and all this other kind of stuff. But I digress. It does appear we are live currently, so let's go ahead and listen in to some of what the governor has got to say. I'm certainly interested in hearing this.
Getting the bills down here as fast as possible, because then they can fulfill that delivery hurdle that is part of the quick speed in. How do you, Mr. Secretary? Yes.
No, I just want.
Could I ask a question of Dr. Hunt?
Oh, yes.
Doctor, last week you had indicated that the latest information of the mortality rate of coronavirus is about 1.4%. Has that changed at all?
So for those of you who can't hear, and to reiterate the questioner asked the doctor here, is the death rate roughly 1.4% still here in the United States?
Numbers, but everything's hovering right around that 1% that I've seen in the coming out last few days. Literally, we have 5 or 6 new studies published every day that I've been trying to keep up with, and that's the number that seems to be still out there.
Chris, why don't you talk about what we just talked about?
And we can kind of fact check that here as well.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and do that.
We talked about a lot. So we are very aware that we need to be able to project out how many people might become ill, hospitalized, and potentially need critical care in the coming weeks and months. It's very hard to predict because so much of it depends on what we're doing in Idaho, and as the governor just announced today, changes are happening so frequently, it's very hard to predict in the future, but we're constantly changing. We need to change.
All right, so we're currently at 6,539 cases,
but we are going to be reaching
116 dead in the
with
U.S.
modeling, so we have a clear picture.
I'm going to do the math on that real
We
quickly.
are nimble enough to keep updating those estimates. and how many people might end up in the hospital, how many people, when will our peak be? If we implement these tougher measures that the governor announced today, hopefully we'll be able to really reduce the burden on healthcare, reduce the amount of illness in Idaho. So we're going to be reaching out today and really getting those formal conversations started with our universities.
Any of the patients that have been confirmed in Idaho yet, have any of them been hospitalized?
Yeah, so the question is about have any of them been hospitalized? There are 9 cases. Yes, 2 of them have.
Okay, our
been
current death rate
hospitalized.
sits at 1.8%. 1.8%.
I did get an update this morning, but to my understanding, they're both doing.
Just so everybody is aware of that. So when she says that it hovers around 1%, 1.4% was her original quote. A little bit off, but obviously the numbers kind of fluctuate every day. She is about right, though. It's about 1.8%. I've been saying 2%.
Become sick enough to need hospitalization.
Yes, absolutely. So, right, so the question is what % might need hospitalization? And that, I would direct you to, in a little bit way, that's particularly challenging because the data from other countries reflects cultural differences in who might need hospitalization and what triggers they use to hospitalize patients. So we don't have a firm number on that. What we're going to do is look at the data out of China, but knowing their healthcare system is so different, I think we're more.
By which she means terrible.
What we're seeing out of Europe. And you may be aware just yesterday, the study that was released from the United Kingdom, I urge you all to read that. We found that very, very interesting and helpful. They looked at United Kingdom and tried to project onto the United States, but we are literally just digesting that information and we'll be incorporating that into our modeling. But I don't have a firm answer for you on it today.
For Dr. Hahn, actually, is there any indication right now of community spread in Idaho, or are the 9 confirmed cases all travel related?
Yes, as the governor indicated, we do not have any, we are not declaring or have any evidence of community transmission. That said, as you know, every day we're getting new cases reported, so we know that's going to change at some point. But as we talked about before, every time a case is reported, within hours the local health department is reaching out to that patient. As soon as they know the doctor has notified that patient of the result, they're reaching out, interviewing them, determining where they might have picked this up. And so far, we've been able to find some either direct travel or exposure to somebody who had just traveled in from out of state. But we know that at some point, we're going to hit that point where somebody says, I haven't gone anywhere and I don't know where I got it. And at that point, I'm sure the governor will be making an announcement.
Now, see, and that's a very vitally important thing, in my own personal opinion. Because, you know, one of the good things that happens with community spread is actually herd immunity, right? If we all end up not getting this virus, but it doesn't actually go away, and we just reintroduce ourselves back into the world sphere, and all end up getting the virus and dying anyways, then, of course, we didn't accomplish anything. So not only is it a bad idea for economic standpoints and from communal standpoints, but it's just a bad idea from a herd immunity standpoint anyway. But the governor is speaking again.
Well, there's actually 3.
If anybody on the Facebook live stream cannot currently hear, please do let me know.
Everybody gets exposed until such time as there's a vaccine, and until other times there's going to be a certain percent that are going to be they're probably going to get exposed to this. Some of them it's going to be almost de minimis, and we think that's part of the issues taking place in other areas. There were a lot of people who had subclinical signs. Tell me, have my state epidemiologist tell me if I get off base. And that's where some of this has grown. But we want to spread this thing out to where our hospital capacity. And the other thing we're trying to do is increase hospital capacity. Today, our Board of Medicine met this morning at 7:30 about what they can do in licensing, about people that are either retired or other people that are out there, what we can do with PAs, what we can do with nurse practitioners. We're trying to raise the one line where we're trying to flatten the curve, and those are the 2 things we're working on.
Looking at some of the comments here, people are saying, yeah, but the president said we shouldn't meet in anything greater than 10. Yeah, because the president doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay? The president is trying to make people admire him because he's a quintessential populist. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not.
Well, it depends.
But in this case, it is not.
There are all these variables, and that's that's what we talked about, as these variables change, what we need to do will change. So it all depends. We have the benefit of learning from other countries and other states, given the fact that we were one of the last states. So the good work that Health and Welfare and Dr. Vaughn and our group have put together is we're preparing for that. But you know, it's a mathematical calculation. If X happens, we do Y.
And then how happy are you with the way Idahoans are responding now to your suggestions?
You know, I am, for the most part pleased. I think, I mean, this is a very stressful, you know, turn on any of the major media. It's, you know, I'm concerned about the stress level. I'm concerned about these people being home. I'm concerned about people being off work. I'm concerned about people who a week ago, you know, might have been just trying to get their economic nose above the water. And, you know, there are a lot of stress factors out here. And given the stress factors, I always have great confidence in the resiliency of Idahoans for a variety of reasons.
See, and those are the proper things to be concerned about, though, too. He's kind of just going on about resiliency of Idahoans. But let's be perfectly clear, right? The death of the elderly is, of course, problematic, and we always want to make sure we do everything in our power to stop that. But we cannot sacrifice the entire economic structure of our country and our state in order to try and keep 2% alive, right? 2% is a very small number, and it's going down, as we just saw. It's 1.8% now, right? But we cannot afford to have tons of restaurant workers and factory workers and retail workers and etc. who are out of the job. We just can't afford it, and I hope Governor Little understands that.
I said that I talked to before your caucus showed up. I said that I had talked to legislative leadership, and I understood it was their intent to be out here today, and that's what I think.
Okay, well, majority leadership.
Excuse me.
Well, I talked to both of you yesterday also.
Along the same lines, Governor, given the guidelines that you're discussing, should we all be here in the Capitol right now? Should the legislative session even be operating today?
Well, we will probably continue to refine how we reach out to the media, and this is just one of those mathematical calculations. One of those mathematical calculations is at X time, when this happens, we do Y. We will probably, if we're like some of the other states and get there, my conversation with my fellow Idahoans in the media will be with more distancing. That's just one example of it. And I'm grateful to the legislature for their some of the technology funding they gave us for all the services of government, including the communications out of my office. We're two different branches of government, and you know, I gave the recommendations. They are, I hope, hours away from consummating their works.
But Senator Linder announced on the floor yesterday that the Senate would continue its work until there was a confirmed coronavirus case in the state capitol building. What do you think of that position?
That we are separate branches of government, and I will speak for the executive branch, and the legislature can speak for their branch.
Very wise man in many instances, I'm not going to lie. I was not a Brad Little supporter in the election, but he has shown quite an ability here, both to separate the powers and to not panic. So I'm proud of him, I'm not going to lie. I'm proud of him.
I think my text did that. We're following CDC guidelines about what the best practices are. We've learned from other states, and I'm concerned. And I'm sure my friends in the media will start writing about it, about some of these, I could say, arbitrary decisions in some other areas where they closed everything down, and now they're, you know, the issue of what do you do about child care? What do you do about, and the big question is, when do you open things back up? That's why we're adopting the White House's 15-day plan that I just went through the points in. But given the dynamics of it, Governor DeWine, I was on a call with him, but you go to a state where everybody goes to work by mass transit, is way different than Idaho, where everybody goes to work in their own automobile. So things are different. As I said, Idaho is a very diverse and expansive state, and what works in Cleveland is not what works in Yellowknife.
It is interesting. There seems to be a lot of people who are really, they almost seem to have a vested interest in getting the governor to freak out and to start closing everything down. Just the other day, yesterday in fact, he had a different, conference where people were able to call in and speak with him. And a man actually said something like 40 to 70% of the population was going to get sick. And that which is like over 3 million people dying. I mean, it's completely insane, right? The idea that something like that would actually end up happening to us. It's a max if you take 70% and also have an 8% death rate, like 16 million dying, right? And this guy's freaking out. He starts giving a speech. The media adores him and loves him. And here's the thing. It isn't going to happen. It is not going to happen. Period. Right? I am here telling you, this is, and I am no prophet, and I am no scientist, so maybe I'm wrong. But I am telling you right now, I am saying a maximum of 130,000 people die. And probably closer to around 30,000 like your average flu.
We make today, first and foremost, I got to keep everybody healthy to the extent I can. I've got to get that curve down. And second, I've got to say, what's my end game? When do kids go back to school? When do the universities open back up? When can businesses go back to work? So I need to minimize the risk now. I'm sure, and I was on a call the other day that there's therapeutics that are being developed. We don't know what those are. We do know that the development of a vaccine is quite a ways out. But each one of those scientific advances, right now, our issue is supplies and testing capacity. We're concerned about both of those, and we're working diligently to address both of those issues. But as long as we can continue to be resilient, but I'm sure the economy is going to slow down. It's impossible for it not to slow down.
On that note, what you said about testing and supplies, what do you have to say about St. Luke's coming out and saying they're going to do drive-up testing?
That's one. We need to expand that model all over the state. But I want to caution everyone that everybody that wants to get testing can't get tested. There's only a certain amount of capacity, as Dr. Hans talked about in our lab, and there's only a certain amount of capacity in the new labs that are coming on. So those same protocols that we've talked about over and over, if you first go through the list of things, if you think you check that list, get a hold of a healthcare provider. In a lot of instances, they'll do a rapid flu test, and if they diagnose you with the normal flu, then that's a different issue. But if you check all those boxes, we're trying to preserve testing capacity so the people that really need it can get tested.
Governor, have you got any estimates yet on the potential fiscal impact on the state?
No, but it's going to be somewhere between bad and badder.
Has there been any talk about deferring payments on state taxes for businesses or individuals?
We will probably follow what the federal government does. I have the authority to postpone when taxes are due, but we need to look at it from a cash flow standpoint. Yesterday at the Board of Examiners, the Secretary of State and I and the Attorney General and the Comptroller signed off on the issuance of TANs, tax anticipation note, which is normal operating procedure. If we delay when taxes are due, we have to look at it from a cash flow standpoint. But if we got a problem in Idaho, the other states got a way bigger problem than we do.
And to be fair, that's accurate. I mean, as much like slack as Governor Little is getting so far, we need to be perfectly clear about something. His not freaking out idea has worked so far. By the way, the live stream video has just ended for those of you who are watching mine live and cannot actually see. And by the way, for those of you who are watching this live, this video with much higher video and audio quality, as well as the ability to actually watch this 20-minute press conference with the governor himself, will be uploaded later on today. It may end up being around nighttime, but nonetheless, it will be happening.
This is yet another attempt to impeach the president.
I had another random thing coming up there. So the governor is exactly right when he says that if there's a problem in Idaho, it's bigger everywhere else. Okay, that is a fact so far. We have managed to have minimal impact on our economy, minimal impact on our elderly, minimal impact on our medical personnel and on our staff and on our doctors and so on and so forth, right? So we certainly do seem to be going about this the right way. I want to show you guys some of these numbers here just to encourage you. The Governor Little's don't freak out policy is going to be the right one if he sticks to it. If you look over here, the countries that have actually had this the longest and had the ability to have people recover and whatnot. So China mainland, of course, 80,894, 3,237 of them have died. Now, it has been hovering around 80,000 for almost a week at this point. In other words, people in China are not getting sick anymore. People in China are not dying in massive rates anymore. The disease seems to be basically dealt with, and people are starting to reopen factories, reopen business, go back to work. Now, 80,894, you can do the math for yourself, is 0.005% of the I was about to say British for some reason, of the Chinese population, right? With 3,237 dead, that is, I believe, just over a 3% death rate, but 69,614 recovered. Let me say that again. 69,614 recovered. Now, this is in a country where you never have accurate news. This is in a country where they biffed on every single level of containing and dealing with this virus. This is a country where their medical practitioners, as well as their medical supplies and access to medical care, is almost on par with a third world countries. And yet here they sit at 69,000 recovered, a mere 3,000 dead, a 3% death rate, and 0.005. I need to stress that for you. 0.005% of the population of China got sick. We're fine. Ladies and gentlemen, we are perfectly, totally fine. We need to have faith in our medical officials. We need to have faith in our government officials occasionally, right? If you're a Christian man or woman, have faith in God. If not, of course, I understand not doing that sort of thing. But 0.005% of what basically amounts to a third world communist dictatorship, 0.005%, sorry, actually got sick. And only 3% of them have died. 69,000 recovered compared to 3,000 dead. Okay? Now, of course, you are seeing the numbers here for Italy. 31,506, 2,503 have died, right? The numbers do seem to be significantly worse for Italy. May I point out for you, Italy is freak out central. Italy shut down absolutely everything, right? They closed down all the businesses. They closed down all the churches. They closed down all the schools. They said you can't go nowhere. They quarantined the whole country, right? And yet they seem to be the ones sitting here with a higher death rate than everybody else and with a low recovery rate. Why do you think that is? Personally, I believe that these freakouts are exacerbating the problem because you get tons and tons and tons of people who they don't have anywhere to be for work, so they can't get their mind off of it. Plus, they're going to be running out of money for bills, for food, etc. They're panic buying, so there's not very much food. So that's another reason for them to be freaking out. Now they have a cough. Oh man, I need to run to the doctor. Go up, run to the doctor. Hey, it turns out you have the flu or you do have the coronavirus and it's not that bad, so go home. But guess what? 17 people behind you also had the virus. One of them's 88 with pre-existing conditions. Now he dies, right? You see how this can very quickly become a problem because you are exacerbating the freakout of the population and of the populace, right? If we look at any of these other countries, Iran, a literal third world Islamic dictatorship. By the way, Islam teaches horrible medical and scientific practices, and yet they have managed to have over 5,000 recovered, and yet they have only 17,000 17,000 of the population, right, who are actually sick, and yet they only have 1,135 deaths. You see what I'm saying? Like, which, to be fair, I grant that the 2,000 that we see in Italy and the 1,000 that we see in Iran, those are higher than 7-8%. They're higher than the usual death rates that we have. But once again, you're talking about corrupt nations with horrible medical practice who have decided that they are going to completely lose their ever-loving minds and freak out over this disease, and they're still not having very serious problems. 5,000 recovered to 1,000 dying. That is 500 times, right, the amount of people recovering in Iran as are dying in Iran. You look at Spain, 1,000 recovered, 624 dead. You look at Germany, 86 recovered, 27 dead. You look at South Korea, 1,500 recovered, 84 dead. You look at France, 602, 175 dead. So far, we do have more dead than recovered at 116 to 106. We've also only been dealing with the problem for roughly a week or two. Excuse me. I need to get all this stuff out of my throat before I actually do these shows. For those of you who have ever smoked in the past or smoke currently, you know that get a lot of real bad stuff in your throat before, during the mornings. But nonetheless, I digress. There's been people calling for the military's involvement in this. There's been people calling for martial law. There's been people calling for complete and total lockdowns and quarantines. There's been people calling for the shutdown of restaurants and all. And I just need to talk about this a little bit, okay? Because it really, really is problematic when people start saying we need to shut down everything because of this 2% death rate. Let me ask you. You work at a restaurant, or maybe you work in a factory, or maybe you own a barbershop, right? Or maybe you work at a retail store, or whatever. Doesn't matter. You work, right? You're paid somewhere between $8 and $12 an hour, more than likely. Maybe you get up to 14 or 15, right? But you work, and you pay your rent, and, rent in Idaho usually centers somewhere between, $900 and $1,500. So you're sitting up here trying to get your rent paid, right? Making your little paycheck here. Now all of a sudden, you don't have a paycheck for a week, or for 2 weeks, or for 30 days even, or for longer than 30 days even. Well, you go up to your renter, whether that's an apartment owner, or whether it's somebody who's actually renting you a townhome, or whether it's somebody who's actually renting you a home, or what have you, right? You go up to them, and you tell them, I don't have any money for this rent. And once I get employed again, I'm only really going to have money for next month's rent. I'm going to kind of be behind now, at least an entire month, for a very significant portion of time. Well, now either A, you have a debt, or B, you're kicked out of the house, right? Because they're not just going to forgive that. They can't. They have paychecks also, or not paychecks, sorry, bills also, right? They also need to go out and buy food. They also need to go out and maintain everything in their own personal life, whether it's health, whether it's, whether it's having a job, whether it's making sure you're living in a good place, etc. Right? So now you have that problem. Oh, by the way, as it turns out, over that last month, sales dropped something like 30, 40, 50%. So we really can't hire you back anyway. Sorry. I hope you have fun at your new job that you now have to look for. So now the employment rate is going down. The amount of people who are going to get stuck on benefits is probably going up. People are being paid less wages. Prices are rising because companies are in desperate need of money. Small companies start going under. Other small company ideas, never come to fruition. People are scared to actually have risk invested in the market, right? And so on and so forth until eventually you have a complete and total economic collapse because your employment rate has gone down. The amount of people on welfare has gone up. Prices have gone up. The amount of people who actually are living somewhere has gone down. The standard of living has gone down, right? So on and so forth. and it all ends up being because of something like 32,000 dead. Imagine that, because that is what we're going towards right now, okay? That is what we are moving towards at this current point in time, not just in the state of Idaho, but in the United States in general. Do you realize that the governor of California just decided that he was going to, by law, shut down absolutely every single meeting of 50 or more, and that the governor of Washington has also done the same thing? Not only is that violation of some of your rights, like the ability to peacefully assemble and your freedom of religion and so on and so forth, but how are you supposed to pay your bills? How are you supposed to pay your bills? Let me stress it, say it again. How are you supposed to pay your bills? What are we going to do? People saying we're going to give $1,000 to everybody in the country. Really? Really? You're going to spend $325 billion of the national budget in a month? By the way, nobody's working and paying taxes, so where is that money coming from? Right? Where is the money you're going to use in the future to pay for other things that you can't pay for because now you had to spend $325 billion in bailing out everybody? And by the way, the government already bailed out Wall Street with $1.5 trillion, quote unquote, most conservative president of all time. Lies, right? $1.5 trillion. Where's that money coming from? What $1.5 trillion worth of government stuff are we now not paying for as a result of us bailing out billionaires in Wall Street? And it didn't even work. The stock market's still collapsing, right? How are you going to handle being out of work? How are you going to handle not being able to get your baby wipes? How are you going to handle not being able to, go out and eat? Maybe it is that you decided, hey, you know what? The local McDonald's or whatever, a mom and pop restaurant, they're going to have some food, right? Because they usually do whenever everybody goes out for a small period of time. At least the restaurants are going to have food. It actually operates kind of nice because while people are eating at the restaurant, other people who are, restocking the grocery stores have time to do that. But now the restaurant's shut down, right? So what are you going to do if we actually decide we're freaking out? If we actually decide that this is something that is actually apocalypse level, that we can't go to work, that we can't go to church, that we can't go to school, and etc. What are you going to do? Because I'm telling you what you're going to do. You're going to sit there, you're going to collapse, you're going to starve, you're going to be homeless, you're going to be jobless. The economy is going to hate us if we do this to it, right? This is going to be rough. It's going to be real rough. And Governor Little at this current point in time has decided to try and make it as unrough as possible. I don't know if unrough is a word, but he's been going out of his way to downplay the panic. He's been going out of his way to tell people, no, we're not going to, on a statewide level, shut down schools. We're not on a statewide level going to shut down restaurants. That is not necessary. It has never been necessary. It will never be necessary. Okay? This is not something that we actually need at this point. There's no reason for people to be threatening pastors in Eagle and murdering children in Horseshoe Bend. And this is happening. There is no reason for the entire Winco or Albertsons or Walmart or what have you to be completely devoid of milk, of bread, of butter, of toilet paper, and etc. But this is what's happening. There was no reason for people to have their jobs shut down, their hours cut, and people being too scared to go actually shop and spend money anyways, even if their hours weren't cut. And yet this is what's happening, right? And this is what is going on right now because people are panicking. It has nothing to do with the virus. Viruses don't somehow make toilet paper go down. Viruses don't all of a sudden eliminate job opportunities. Viruses don't threaten churches and take shotguns and murder little kids in Horseshoe Bend. Okay? That is not what viruses do. You know what does do that, though? Human beings panicking. And when human beings are panicking over literally nothing, over a 0.005% infection rate and a 2% death rate, 1.8%, my apologies, 1.8% death rate, okay? That is nothing. You're freaking out over nothing. You're collapsing the stock market over nothing. You're collapsing the economy over nothing, right? And allow me to get slightly religious for a minute about these churches. There is absolutely nowhere that you are safer as a believing Christian than amongst other believing Christians in the house of God. Absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. There's a lot of people out there who go about, whenever you need a cure for a disease, nobody lines up at the church. They line up at the hospital. Well, I can tell you where I line up, and it definitely ain't at no hospital, right? Now, that's my personal beliefs. You guys want to go to the doctor. There's obviously nothing wrong with that, right? It's not like I'm opposed to using doctors. I'm not a Christian Scientist. I am just simply saying my God is bigger than coronavirus, okay? And when the pastors are sitting up there not panicking with filled congregations talking about, preaching faith and preaching healing to the sick, right? Hopefully, you'll see a big boon in people understanding that Christianity is the real deal at that point. Isn't it ironic that Mecca, that the LDS, that the Roman Catholic Church, they all shut down? Sounds to me like they don't have a very serious faith in their God. But I do, and you should if you're a believer, right? You should understand that. And, just the other day I asked Michael Brown, this lack of faith we have when it comes to shutting down churches. We never did this over any other diseases. Why are we letting not only the government, but in some cases the world and even our own congregations bully us into shutting down these congregations? And interestingly enough, he said, well, if your faith is so strong, why don't you go minister healing to the sick? And you know what, Michael Brown? Exactly right. Yes, we should be ministering healing unto the sick because that is exactly what Jesus had told us to do. But I digress. We're getting a little bit too religious. This is a political show. There's no reason, ladies and gentlemen. There's no reason. There's no reason to shut down churches. There's no reason, to shut down restaurants. There's no reason to shut down grocery stores. There's no reason to shut down schools, right? We are going to be fine. Liberty University and Idaho and these churches that decide to stay open, and Tucker Carlson and everybody else, right, Alex Jones and etc., everybody else who's telling you stop freaking out. A year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, however long it takes for us to look back on this as history, they're going to be seen not only as correct, but everybody's going to, obviously they were correct. What does shutting down the entire economy do, right? You're going to see that happen. And especially if we see 32,000 at minimum and 130,000 at maximum deaths rather than the absurd 500,000 or 1 million plus that people are suggesting, right? 32,000 is the flu. 132,000 is slightly worse than the flu. So in both of those instances, worst case and best case, we're fine, right? We're going to be fine. If it turns out that it's like this and we have a collapsed economy, of course, then unfortunately history is going to look back not quite as jokingly, but rather angrily. And I certainly do hope that we do not end up having that sort of an economic collapse. We have a great economy at the moment. We've had a great economy for some time now. Up until 2 weeks ago, we had booming business in restaurants, booming business in factories, people being paid high-wage jobs, right? People were getting benefits, and the market was providing these benefits, not the government, right? They were good benefits. They were solid health benefits. People were getting cured of their diseases because they had these solid health benefits. The people were, having good hours, paid days off, right? We were having explosions of employment. People were deciding, I want to open businesses. I want to follow my dreams. I want to go onto YouTube, whatever it happens to be, right? That was 2 weeks ago. Really, it was 1 week ago. So, it's not like we have a terrible economy at this moment. It's not like we have a government that is completely malfunctioning at this moment. The only very serious problem that we have so far is a panic of Americans, okay? And we need to stop that. We need to come together. We need to tell our friends and family, hey, maybe you don't need the 50th roll of toilet paper, okay? We're all going to be fine. We'll take the precautions like sanitizing and washing our hands and things that we should have been doing anyways, right? But there's no reason to completely upend the economic system and to go after people who are deciding that there's no reason to completely upend the economic system. Kind of weird cutting this off at 45 minutes rather than an hour, but we were really only looking at the governor's press conference, so there's not really much else that I have to say, to be honest with you. Just to give you guys some of the updates again, there's 9 cases confirmed of coronavirus in the state of Idaho. There is no deaths so far that we have been able to, at least nobody has reported any deaths, right? Of course, there's some question due to the testing as to whether or not we've actually been ahead of the curve testing everybody, but you can't argue from things that you don't know. So at this time, 9 infected, 0 dead, 0 recovered because none of them have had time to recover. So we'll, of course, see what happens with that. Testing is starting to become a little bit more open. Do not flock to the doctor's offices to get tested. There are people who actually need to be tested. There are also people who need to be tested and seen for completely separate reasons, right? Just because coronavirus struck and has its little measly 2% death rate doesn't mean everybody with lung cancer all of a sudden stops having lung cancer, right? So don't fill the doctor's beds with a bunch of nonsense. If you have a cough, stay home. You just have a cough. Drink some lemon ginger tea or something. Take a Tylenol. I don't know. You know what I mean? But we're going to be fine. Everybody's going to be fine. I can keep repeating that over and over and over again, but in reality, that is what I want this show to portray, is that we are going to be okay. Shop normally. Don't stock by. If you're sick, stay home like you normally would. Sanitize and clean like you normally would. Right? If you feel that you are in serious trouble, you're starting to have trouble breathing, things like that, ask yourself if it's legitimate. If it is legitimate, maybe then it is a good idea for you to go to the doctor, right? But, attend your church services normally. Go to work. Live your life, okay? This disease is not going to be looked back as the Spanish flu. It's not even going to be looked back as the Athens flu, right? We're going to be okay. Everybody's going to be fine. This is just another Zika. It's just another Ebola. It's just another swine flu. It's just another bird flu or MARS or SARS or whatever you decide that this is, right? There's been tons of these fluke, hoaxy kind of diseases. And by hoax, I don't mean that it didn't happen. I mean that the media and government blew it way out of proportion. Okay, so just so we're perfectly clear on that. But this happens every year. We're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. Everybody's fine. Trust in God, trust in your medical officials, and we will get through this. Don't panic buy. Don't rush to the hospital. Don't quit your job, right? We're going to be okay. But at any rate, shalom, friends. Like I said, for those of you who watch this live, it is going to be posted later on today on both YouTube and Facebook in a much higher video and audio quality. So you'll be able to check that out there. If you enjoyed it, please do like, share, like here on the American Cynic Party on Facebook or the TheCynicogue on YouTube. If you enjoy our content, we do have, of course, not only this, which is politically oriented and news oriented, but we also have Unapologetics, which is religiously oriented and apologetics oriented. So if you're interested in either of those, please do check them out. Questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, critiques, anything like that, throw them in the comment section. You can also, of course, throw them in the comment section of YouTube once I upload this video there. And we have numerous other social media accounts if you're interested in following us. Those will all be in the link in the description of the YouTube video, but since it's not going to be there at this current point in time, I'll just go ahead and let you know. We have the TheCynicogue on Minds, TheCynicogue on BitChute, ACP Official on Gab, Terrestrial Earthbird on Twitter, Cynic Thought on Instagram, and as I have already mentioned for you guys, the American Cynic Party here on Facebook, and the TheCynicogue on YouTube. Thank you guys very much. Remember to avoid the panic. Remember to trust in God and your government officials at this particular point. I know I'm always one of those people who's not big on trusting the government, but look, we do have government for a reason. Minarchy means minimum government, not no government. And this is the kind of reason that we do have a government. But that doesn't mean that everything they do is correct, right? They shut everything down. They upend the economy. That's certainly not a good thing. So just keep your panic levels down, and we will be fine. Shalom, friends.